There's something strange going on our timeline right now. Strange as in this has not happened before. I didn't see this one coming. And yet now that it's here, it's obvious, it makes sense. And I understand that every single light worker is going to have a chance, an opportunity to perform the task that I'm about to share with you today. We have one crazy timeline that we are all operating on right now. And I say it like that because it seems as if we should surely be in a place where there are 1,000 different divergent timelines. But the truth is, we are in, well, the eye of the needle, the convergence point. This means all timelines have converged into one place. That's what all the Mandela effect stuff is about. It's about all of these timelines that used to be their own stream of reality converging into one place. Why are they doing that? Because we're getting ready for ascension. At the ascension point, there is this final purifying of the timeline into one 5D timeline. There is a divergent timeline at the point of ascension that splits off from the timeline that we're on right now. We know this as the 4D timeline. If you're not familiar with my work, I've got multiple videos about this. So in the very briefest form possible, let me tell you what this looks like. The timeline that we're on right now heads to 5D. Those of us that stay on planet Earth stay on the 5D timeline. We've already chosen this at the soul level, not the level of the personality, the level of the soul. Equally, there are those who've made a soul choice to veer off into what I call the divergent timeline. This simply means the timeline that is diverging from 5D, and they're going into another ascension window. This basically means they're going to have another practice round at the journey from lower density into higher density. That's exactly what we did when we came onto the timeline that we're on right now. We're in the completion phase. So yes, this timeline is mega, massive for multiple reasons. One of them being because we're culminating everything that we've worked multiple lifetimes for into this one lifetime. This is why everything in your life is coming to a convergence point or a conclusion point. Sometimes it feels like endings. Other times it feels like a WTF moment. What the hoo-ha am I doing in the world right now? It can be very overwhelming, confusing, sure. But what's taking place in our timeline right now are these two streams splitting further away from each other. And as they split further away from each other, they create more room in between. Can you imagine that? More of a gap in between. So imagine that we've got one timeline, but two streams of consciousness that are rushing, gushing through this timeline. And the one, being the 5D timeline, is elevating in its 5D-ness. It's elevating and crystallizing into more of a solid 5D timeline. In other words, we're doing pretty damn well. There are those on the divergent timeline who are doing exactly the same thing. They're also doing beautifully at solidifying their timeline. They're going deeper into their density. These guys are going deeper into their light. And I know at this point, I know so many people hear that as wrong and bad and tragic, and we have to save them, but we can't. That's not our role. Our role is to be the light. And in being the light, we're being everything that we're being called to be. Because the light is the invitation and it is the example that those who are on that divergent timeline will gravitate to in order to jump timelines from the lower to the higher timeline. Not because it's right, just because it's their choice. So right now there is still that opportunity to jump from the lower to the higher timeline. And yes, from the higher to the lower, although it's harder, to be very honest with you. It's harder. Have you felt it in your own life? It's harder to jump from high to low because it just feels wrong. You almost feel like the universe is giving you a cosmic slap when you step out of alignment. And there's something in you that automates and brings you back into higher alignment. Why? Because it's your nature. And once you taste a sip of your own nature, you will keep reverting back to it time and time again. Now, on these two timelines, where we are right now, or I should rather say these two streams of reality. They will become two separate timelines, but right now there's still two streams of reality. They have a membrane, an energetic membrane around them, which allows us to travel between the two from one to the other. Right now, we can still see the people in each timeline, so it's almost like having this invisible barrier between you and the other timeline, which is why some people just won't see you or won't register that you're there. If they're in the lower timeline and you're in the higher, for example, it's almost as if you're invisible to them because they can't read your bandwidth. They can't quite perceive of the higher realm. Although it's right next to them, sometimes in the same room as them, sometimes even having a conversation with them, those in the lower timeline will battle to perceive those in the higher. And equally, those in the higher are going to start to feel like they're fading away from those in the lower. This is just part of the natural progression of the two timelines. Oh gosh, you guys, I know, because the question trips everybody up and I can't even move forward until I answer it. And I've answered it so many times already, but let me go. Please fast forward this if you've heard the answer, but I know the question is, okay, what happens to those who I love that are in the lower timeline? I'm desperate to save them. I don't want to live without them. We have to respect the choice of each individual soul. Children and animal tend to gravitate to the parent with the highest ascending energy. For animals, for children, ascension is just another breath. It's super easy. For those of us who've held a lot of distortion and become very addicted to the distortion and identified heavily with the distortion, yes, we can certainly battle with the ascension process because we feel like if we give up the density, we give up ourselves, we give up our story, we give up the cross we were bearing, the victimhood we were holding, we give up the pain, then we think to ourselves, well, what was the point of holding the pain in the first place? So we have this aversion, a very unconscious aversion to wholeness, to healing. We have a very unconscious programming within us that is remaining or is trying to remain loyal to the false matrix. That's just the dynamics of what's at play and why we find it hard sometimes to shift into the ascension timeline, why we're challenged by it, because we're challenged to let go of the illusions of what we're not. Okay, so that's the answer. They won't remember who they are. I know that's the other question you want to ask, isn't it? What happens to them? Just in the same way you were born to this life not remembering who you were before it, same for them. They're born into a new life, new name, new body. You've had the experience. You know exactly what it feels like. But there's something in them, right? There's something in them, just like there's something in you right now that calls you and says, there's more to life. There's more to you. There's more to the mystery. I want to uncover. I don't know how, but I want to uncover what else there is, what else I am. That's the journey for everybody in the repeat ascension timeline. Now, those that are going off into 5D or pop that timeline or that stream of consciousness that will become its own separate timeline now has this invisible membrane wrapped around it. But over time, that invisible membrane, kind of like a sheath holding the fluidity, the flow, and the frequency of each individual stream within the timeline, that becomes more and more solidified, crystallized, until eventually it becomes so thick that you can't walk between timelines. We're not there yet. When we are there, that's when we're really close to the ascension point. That's when we are just about at that split point. This is what people mean when they talk about two divergent timelines or the timeline split or the two world splits. I've done multiple videos about it. You can go and watch them and I will leave them in the description box below. So here's the amazing thing that's taking place right now. Imagine that there is now the space that's opening up between these two streams because they're becoming so crystallized in their own alignment. They're naturally going to veer apart. So if you have relationships in your life that feel like they're doing that, now you also understand why. But there are people that at the last minute will want to jump ship, so to speak, will want to jump from that lower stream of consciousness into the higher one. From that which is going into the lower density timeline, into the higher density timeline. But it's becoming harder now. Much harder to do that because of the space between, or the difference between these two polarities and these two densities. So guess what, you beautiful sweethearts that are the light workers, spiritual warriors, divine star seeds, whatever you call yourselves. You know you, right? You, the conscious one I'm speaking to. You're laying your body between the two streams. Yes, you are. So what does that mean? It means there's going to be a little time, a little moment in time when you're going to say, what the hell's going on? I'm in limbo. You're going to say, I don't get where I am. It's like I've just been unplugged. It's almost like I can't hear anything. I used to hear my guides, or I used to hear consciousness or feel consciousness. I'm feeling this weird emptiness, or I'm feeling this weird void, or I'm feeling this weird vacuum. I'm feeling this weird in-between hovering type of space. And we have multiple words for it, from limbo to emptiness. And we think that there's something wrong when we're there. We think that reality has gone haywire, or we have fallen perhaps. This is not a sign of your failure. This is a sign of your service, because there are multiple light workers that are going to populate that empty space. And you know what they're doing in populating that empty space? They are making themselves the bridge. They are making themselves the medium through which those in the lower density timeline can reach the higher density timeline. Because right up until the ascension point, there will be opportunities to shift timeline. Right up until the ascension point, there will be those who move from the lower to the higher. No, you cannot be in this in-between space in self-sacrifice. Doesn't work. Do you know why? If it causes you martyrdom or self-sacrifice to be here in this in-between space, then it is not an offering. It is not a service. It becomes a trapping of energy. It becomes a very harmful state for you, because you're going to get depleted. And those who you try to assist from your depletion will actually only meet you in your depletion. So please understand that the role of being in the in-between is temporary. And I know what's going to happen. There's going to be people that say, oh, Carrie, I've been here forever. No, you haven't. I understand that many people understand the limbo space, and that isn't what I'm talking about right now. Feels very similar. I get it. What I'm talking about right now is the space between two streams of reality that will become two separate timelines. The space between is what we're populating right now. You know what? I've got a little visual in my mind. It's kind of like this. Imagine that these two streams are like two trains, and the two trains are doing this. They're kind of they're veering apart. They're at that point. And then there are those that kind of put themselves between the two trains, not to harm themselves, but to support those who are moving from one train to the other. That's entirely possible right now. It's based entirely on free will, but please hear this. You can't wake them up, tap on the glass, try to get their attention, tell them that where they are is wrong and it's going to end in disaster, because it's not. In the same way that when you left your past life, it wasn't disaster, it led you to this life, it led you to a new beginning. Exactly the same is true for them. It leads them to the journey home. Everything ultimately leads us to one place, which is back to our original home as one with all that is. It doesn't matter how long it takes to get there. We're infinite things. So can you see the beauty of what each light worker is being given the opportunity to participate in? And much like everything else that we as light workers have done, we're going to take shifts. We're going to do this in rotation. There's going to be times when we're going to be in that in-between space, maybe for a couple of hours, maybe for a couple of days, maybe for a couple of weeks at most. And when you're there, take a holiday. And what I mean by that is, just enjoy the fact that for right now, this very temporary moment in your life, it's going to feel a little bit like you've been unplugged. It's going to feel a little bit like you're not quite grounded. It's going to feel a little bit like you're here, there, everywhere, and weirdly nowhere all at the same time. Life's going to just not make sense, and time's going to feel weirder than normal when you're in that space. It's absolutely fine, but take it as a rest point. Take it as a refueling station. Guess what your nature is? Your nature is to be light. So what are you going to actually do? I love this. What you're actually going to do in that in-between place, you're going to start infusing light into it, which actually, if you think about it, does the following. It actually is going to broaden the 5D timeline. It's actually going to expand the 5D timeline. Do you see that? That space between is now no longer, because of the participation of the light workers in that so-called emptiness, that space is no longer empty. It's now becoming light infused, which means it actually becomes part of the ascending timeline. Part of our goal was always this, to see how many could ascend into the 5D timeline. That was a very big objective for us as light workers before we even incarnated here. We wanted as many to go as possible, as many that could ascend, wanted to ascend, and we're holding possibilities for that to happen. We're making it possible for those who are still living in the lower timeline to jump into the higher timeline, even when it shouldn't really be possible anymore. Will you remember what I said though, please, about you can't reach in there? You can't reach in there and debate them, because nobody awakens through your debate. Nobody awakens because you're throwing cold water on their face. All that they're going to do is just get indignant and stubborn and resistant and just keep going back to sleep more and more and more. Exactly the same thing that you might do with your alarm clock. You just say 5 more minutes, and you actually land up sleeping deeper in those 5 minutes. Has that ever happened to you? You're just so avoiding the wake up. So allow those that come to you and know that your presence in that in-between place is enough. Remember that you don't need a written note from the universe that says, congratulations, you've done 3 days in the in-between. Congratulations, thank you for your service. You don't get that note. You just get a sense that somehow you've served humanity by serving yourself. You won't know at the linear logical level what you've done and who you've done it for, but countless many will be enabled by the bridging that you bring to these two streams of consciousness, or the two timelines. Countless people will be served by the opportunity that your presence provides. That's really how we support each other right now. It's through our presence. From my heart, darlings. All the way to yours, all the way. Let love in, let light in, let you in. How about that? How about you let you into your own here and now? Let you into your own embodiment. Let you into your own life more fully. Let more you, more in. Does that make sense? More you, more soul, into more of your life. And every time you do that, you elevate yourself. Every time you elevate yourself, the ripple ripples louder. And that's what you're being called to do. And that's what your invitation is. It is issued through your ripple. It is your ripple that is the light that precedes you, that whispers to others. Not only am I inviting you, I'm going to make your journey possible. I'm going to show you how to jump on over. We do this as a collective of light workers. Nobody taps you on your shoulder and says, psst, you're up. You're just going to one day feel yourself in that weird kind of in-between-ish space. Life doesn't make sense. You're feeling discombobulated and confused. If you've ever felt it before, it's okay. I think we all have. Every time we go into a higher realm, we have that little moment in the in-between. So we've done this for ourselves multiple times. We have shifted ourselves multiple times. We're just showing others how to do the same. From my heart, you betcha.